Greetings everyone! This is a quick promo before the video begins. If you're new to the channel and you didn't know it yet, I am actually an author in addition to being a YouTuber, and I have 2 books that you can get on Amazon. Operation Red Dragon: The Kaiju Wars Part 1 and The Occult Mafia. The first is sort of a bizarre, absurdist kaiju anime mashup, and the other is a horror noir story with a hint of a western thrown in there. They're both set in the same universe, and at this point have received mostly positive reviews, so you might want to check them out. I've provided Amazon links for both of them down in the description. They're both available in either paperback or Amazon Kindle, and Operation Red Dragon is also available in audiobook form. So if either of these strike your fancy and you want to support a struggling artist, feel free to go down and check out either one or both of them. Alright, the shameless self-promotion is out of the way, we can get on with the video. Thank you all for your support. So it came to my attention that some of you guys want to know my thoughts on the Monster Hunter trailer that premiered. I wasn't originally going to cover it, but you guys are curious, so I figure I may as well share my thoughts. I should, however, be honest with you up front about this. I don't know much about the Monster Hunter series. I'm not much of a gamer, though I do try to keep up with what's going on in video games because I've known a lot of gamers over the course of my life. So I want to be able to understand what they're talking about and contribute something to the conversation. But for the most part, I've just never been all that heavy into video games. I do know some stuff, as you've surmised probably from past videos. I was familiar enough with Rampage to judge the Rampage movie. I know plenty about Sonic the Hedgehog, though I'm not necessarily, well-versed in more current lore. I know some stuff, and I've played some games, but even among my gamer friends, Monster Hunter was never really something that was frequently discussed. I don't even think it was ever discussed. So I'm going into this completely blind. I don't recognize any characters or creatures or settings or objects that might be in this trailer. Though, based on the response that a lot of people who are familiar with the games are delivering, it seems not much of what's in the games made it into the movie anyway, so it's gonna be another one of those kind of video game adaptations. But since I cannot tell you how the movie looks as a game adaptation, I can only tell you how I think it looks as a movie. And as a movie, this trailer left no impact on me at all. I mean it, I've seen it a couple times now. I in fact just re-watched it before filming this, and I still feel nothing in a way, because it looks like a very by-the-numbers kind of movie. By-the-numbers military characters in a by-the-numbers military setting who will be fighting what looks like by-the-numbers monsters. Although, well, let's talk about the monsters for a moment. I am going to say this much for the movie. The monsters look good, both in terms of special effects and in terms of general design. Again, I don't know if they are accurate to what you might see in the games, but a good-looking monster is a good-looking monster. And if nothing else, I think the movie will have that going for it. It'll probably have some thrilling monster sequences with some well-designed creatures in them. Everything else looks kind of bland, though, particularly when it comes to the setting. I have noticed a lot of people using clips from this trailer as part of a collage, if you will, calling for the normalization of monster fights in the daytime, because there's a lot of daytime shots here, and that feels specifically like it's aimed at the legendary Godzilla movies, which feature most of their monster sequences at night or in the dark. Not all of those sequences are that way, mind you, but the majority of the big set pieces we land on are. Alright, so this movie is going to have monster scenes that take place in the daytime. Did you also happen to notice that they're set in featureless deserts? Is that really our trade-off? Because it seems like that's what's going on. We've got some giant monsters that we can see clearly without darkness or weather effects or anything, sure. but they're in one of the least interesting settings you could possibly choose. The only thing that would be less interesting than a featureless desert would be an actual green screen soundstage. I mean, that may as well be the case, because you're setting these scenes in a place where there's not much to interact with. Sure, you can kick up sand and maybe leave footprints in it, but what else can you do really beyond that? And the thing is, if that was the trade-off, it didn't need to be. I remember Kong Skull Island. It had a lot of daytime scenes, and it also had those scenes set in environments that creatures could interact with. Like, yeah, even the final battle between Kong and the giant skull crawler, that did kind of have a space cleared out that felt like an arena if you really look at it. But first of all, it wasn't set in sand. It was set in water that the characters were ankle deep in. So that made for something slightly more interesting to look at. But there were also other objects in the area that they could crash into or pick up or things like that. It wasn't just a wide open space that maybe has some rolling dunes. It was a clearing, sure, but a clearing with stuff in it. In short, if they really did put so much money towards the monsters that they had to settle for an uninteresting bland desert as their backdrop, that's gonna be a problem. Now, okay, to be fair, we do see more than just wide open deserts. We get a couple of shots that look like an oasis in the desert, let's say. But the majority of our time is being spent in the desert, so I think that's where most of the movie is going to take place. And that is going to be a very hard sell. Not that deserts can't be interesting. I did see Stephen Sommers' version of The Mummy, but it doesn't look like they're really doing anything interesting with it here. And as for the characters, the trailer admittedly doesn't do much to showcase them, but what we're looking at appears to be a fairly stock group of soldier characters who are going to be thrust into an unnatural environment but still reacting the way soldiers do in these kind of movies. I'm picking up sort of Michael Bay Transformers vibe. You remember that group of soldiers in the first movie who spent most of their time on the other side of the world getting chased by Scorponok, and they were acting like soldiers the whole time, even though they had those extraordinary circumstances? That's how it kind of feels. And I know there's a big brouhaha about whether or not people should care about the human characters in a giant monster movie, but I get the feeling that we're going to be spending most of our time with these characters, and the monsters are going to be of the general animalistic roar and smash things kind of monsters, not characters like King Kong or Godzilla or Mothra. So the fact that they seem to be fairly one-note is worrying. I don't think it's impossible for them to potentially have hidden depths, but then again, it doesn't seem like that's what the movie is going for with its tone. So ultimately, my prediction is that this movie's probably gonna flop. Even if the circumstances weren't what they currently are out in the real world, it probably still would have flopped. Because there's nothing really here to get a general audience excited, and it's already clearly alienated its core fan base of Monster Hunter fans. So what does that leave? People who have nothing else to do on a Friday night? People who just have money to burn on movie tickets? I don't know. The only way I can see this movie really coming through is if it pulls a Steve Alton's Meg and does insanely well in China. But then again, the latest film that was tailor-made to succeed in China, the remake of Disney's Mulan, flopped hard there. So even the Chinese box office isn't a guarantee these days. This just feels like it's a movie that'll be forgotten. And that's probably disappointing for Monster Hunter fans who have been waiting for something like this. And it's too bad ultimately because it's yet another reminder that we haven't quite broken the curse of bad video game movie adaptations. Because it seemed like people thought finally Hollywood was getting it after the success of films like Detective Pikachu or Sonic the Hedgehog. It seemed like Hollywood was finally getting how to do a video game-based movie right, or at least well enough that it wasn't completely forgettable or just downright insultingly bad. But it was never going to be a simple switch from we're making bad stuff until we're making good stuff. I mean, it happened with superhero movies. Sure, we got X-Men and Spider-Man that showed us how to make good superhero movies, even though X-Men hasn't exactly aged very well. But after those films, we still got a bunch of superhero movies that were middling to fair or just outright bad. False starts, series that didn't last beyond 2 films if they were lucky, things like that. It wasn't just an immediate switch. So even with some good video game-based movies out there, we're still going to have some trouble getting more of them. The presence of Sonic and Detective Pikachu and even Rampage, which I still count as a good movie even if it's a bad adaptation, those only get us to a point where the likelihood of good video game-based movies has increased. It doesn't mean we're going to only get good video game-based movies from here on out. We're still gonna get stuff that's bland, and it looks like Monster Force is going to be one of those bland movies. And in the end, that's about all I can say. The monsters look interesting, nothing else about it does. And I'm saying that as someone who doesn't know thing one about Monster Hunter. So take that for what it's worth. And that's about all I do have to say on the matter, so I hope that satiated your curiosity. Until such time as we meet again, this is the Omni Viewer signing off.
If you enjoyed this video, you know what to do. Like and subscribe, then go down to the description to find links to follow us on DeviantArt, Patreon, and Twitter. While you're there, you'll also find the Amazon links for the original novels Operation Red Dragon, The Kaiju Wars Part 1, and The Occult Mafia. 2 books I think you'll really enjoy. Thank you all, and we appreciate your support.